Hey Patriots, welcome back to the Progressive Playbook. I am your humble dealer, looking to close out the Knowledge Core. First thing I'll say is, I think for the US, knowledge is the least broken of the 6 cores. We got a lot of the Knowledge Core correct from the beginning. Sure, there is a growing concern of profit-motivated charter schools, and universities are acting like businesses and jacking up tuition uncontrollably. But we have a K-12 system that is a universal requirement, which means the vast majority of people, rich or poor, have a vested interest in getting the quality of the system high. This core doesn't have fundamental structural issues like the other cores. Our healthcare system is not designed with universality in mind. It keeps us divided and allows insurance companies to screw us over. We have the rich getting richer and housing prices are skyrocketing in the value core. Oil manufacturers are trying to smear climate science in the environment core. We've got corrupt politicians and incompetent mainstream media in the voice core, and a military-industrial complex promoting endless war in the peace core. But before we move on to these cores, let's see what we can learn from this one. Those of you who saw my final health core video may remember I asked you to introspect deeply to understand whether you are physically, mentally, and emotionally well enough to engage in politics, and it's perfectly fine to recognize when you have more immediate life stuff to take care of. That periodic introspective wellness check is important because the knowledge core builds on top of it. As the core of personal change, the knowledge core challenges us to reflect on how we think about politics. In this video, I'll talk about 3 takeaway practices we can incorporate in ourselves on our journey to becoming agents of change. This channel is all about positive thinking, so my first practice is to build a can-do attitude.
Some of these guys have a bad attitude, Skip.
They sure do, Strawberry.
One of the key antagonists of idea generation is cynicism. I've heard some people proudly proclaim themselves to be a cynic. I've even had somebody break up with me because I wasn't cynical enough for her. But cynicism isn't a good thing. There is no such thing as a healthy amount of cynicism. My favorite description of a cynic is someone who lets themselves down before the world does it for them. Cynicism is an attitude rooted in insecurity. It's a defense mechanism out of fear of being hurt. It's totally understandable because the more knowledge we gain about the world, how broken the systems are, and how many politicians are lying to us all the time, it leaves us with less faith and less trust. The problem is when someone does come along with that legitimate drive, vision, and ideas to create positive change, the doomers swing that cynical hammer at them too. Politics is full of cynical people, and they're such bummers at parties.
The latest in a string of deadly storms that left thousands of Floridians homeless. They're still counting the fatalities in Haiti.
Which is why they quickly lose friends or just stop talking about politics entirely, while many other people don't even bother setting foot in the cynical, negative landscape of politics. This is why we haven't discussed how to have political conversations yet. That comes much later in the voice core. For now, we're still building up our playbook. We aren't ready to make plays yet. So how do we look at politics with optimism? I've been planting the seeds along the way, like my 6 debilitating myths video, or when I lay out positive principles like most people can learn most things. Another way is to highlight the wins when they happen. We talked about the real, tangible progress on the state and city levels for things like universal pre-K and universal school meals, which is why it's incredibly important to vote in your state and local elections. By the way, there's a difference between a cynic and a skeptic, and it's all in the attitude. A cynic will poke holes to tear you down to make themselves feel better, very much like a micromanaging boss. But a healthy skeptic takes a more empowering approach. For example, I shared my 5 flavors of healthcare video with someone, and his response was wonderful. He said, I do agree Medicare for all would be a step in the right direction, but aside from the difficulties of getting that through, I think one issue would be around which procedures or tests are deemed medically necessary, and how this could limit available options to patients. It's a great point to consider. Similarly, in a recent video I looked at free college. And while I think it would be beneficial overall, I found that I had some criticisms. At the same time, I want to solve the problem, so I came back in the next video with my own solution, the universal knowledge bond, which I think is a better way to accomplish the goals of free college. This is what productive skepticism looks like. So the practice for you can be to challenge some of my ideas, even leave comments on my videos. We're all friends here, right? But don't just stop there. Also try to propose solutions to those challenges, particularly with my universal knowledge bond idea. And you can probably tell I'm pretty excited about this alternative to free college, but it's a very untested concept. Someone could easily make a point I haven't considered, or one day people may run pilot programs and find it doesn't work for some reason. This is where the second practice comes in, to remain objective. Even though the idea came out of my head, I have to remain impartial to the outcomes, whatever they may be. In my pre-K video, I talked about a Vanderbilt study that showed worse outcomes for universal pre-K. This was quite a shock to the people who designed and conducted the study. Something I learned from my research advisor was plenty of times the best insights come from studies that don't go the way you thought they would. In the case of pre-K, it's led to new, more nuanced questions around how to design a good universal pre-K program. So the question we ask ourselves here is, are we open to having our minds changed by new ideas or new data, or do we hold tightly to the pre-existing beliefs?
If President Biden were indicted for unduly influencing so that it helped his son Hunter, would you think he should be indicted?
Yes.
I mean, and do you think that that should disqualify him from the presidency?
Yes.
But why the indictments against Trump not disqualifying him, but yes, indictments for Biden and disqualifying him?
Because Biden's a liar.
By the way, I love the irony of the shirt he's wearing, because it's all about feelings for guys like him. For politics, I've usually found the source to be an attachment to particular politicians and personalities or political parties, aka sports teams. I'm still in the process of unlearning these habits, but that's the important first step, to set foot in this road to unlearning these habits, rewire the neural pathways so we don't hold emotional attachments to labels or ideas that don't make sense. Making this YouTube channel has been an awesome exercise for rewiring my brain to be policy-driven and data-driven, but the way I got here was by consuming tons of videos and articles and podcasts on each of these topics, one by one, until I felt fluent in them. This includes finding some diverse sources that challenge your beliefs, though you do have to be careful about this because there's some pretty dishonest people who, again, cheerlead for a political sports team. That Vanderbilt pre-K study I mentioned, I first learned about that from Blue Collar Logic. I don't know if he and I would agree on a lot of stuff, but just in hearing him talk, I felt like he was honest, he was coming from a good place, and made decent points. As per one of my core principles, diversifying our sources of knowledge can be compounding, but even more so if we're active about integrating our diverse knowledge, ideas, and skills. To do this, we'll hit my third and final practice, to see as many connections as we can. This is where my 6 core framework comes in. It's a tool to understand how compounding effects work. Let's run through an exercise. You'll notice I didn't talk much about how we're going to fund all of these education programs, universal pre-K, universal school meals, giving teachers a raise, universally subsidizing tertiary education, and that's the number one cynical question you'll get. How are we going to pay for it?
Tax and spend! Tax and spend!
Don't worry, in a future video I will discuss ways to get that money without raising everyone's taxes, but your counter response to that question is to illustrate how having an educated populace is a moral and financial investment with an incredible return that more than pays for itself. Because when you've designed an education system that teaches people to use their knowledge wisely, you'll have a lot more people eating healthily and exercising and taking care of themselves mentally and physically, which lowers the cost of our healthcare, which is currently 28% of our government spending. When we diversify, the knowledge we gain can be used to get a job, which not only improves our country's GDP, it also allows people to save money and build a healthy family. And when you have a society filled with healthy families, you can build strong, diverse communities where people don't fear each other for being different.
To meet different people.
You can't even do it when we're helping!
When we have strong communities of people who voice their knowledge with others through mutual respect, we all grow together, which sends all of these other positive effects into overdrive. Not to mention the spread of knowledge can lead to new, innovative business ventures, something that makes America great. And when you've given people the means to access diverse knowledge through classrooms or books or the internet, you have an educated populace that is more welcoming to the diverse knowledge of immigrants and to the different cultures and systems around the world, which promotes a positive view of Americans worldwide. There are 330 million Americans in a world population of 8 billion people. It's crazy to think all the good ideas have been exhausted. We as a species have only tapped into a small fraction of our potential. It's a matter of modifying our systems to be less about sorting people along a linear stream and instead about empowering people to learn and grow and feel valued in multiple streams. The activation of our entire population is far more powerful than concentrating on a few and leaving the rest behind. We all have something to contribute, we all have inherent value, and that's where we're headed next. In the Value Core, we'll talk about applying our knowledge towards building ourselves in this world. If you've enjoyed the series so far, I invite you to join me in the Value Core, and if you're trusting my voice on this platform, be sure to hit me with that sweet LSV, like, subscribe, and bell, and I'll deal you the next one.